Good evening, everyone. Welcome back then to another stream here on the Low Fuel Motorsport Twitch channel. And we are back with the Case King Pro Series, where we are at round number 8 for Misano. Last week, we had an incredible showdown take place at Sneston Park, where Tinko van der Velde took another victory, the 4th victory for him of a season. That Audi looking in mighty, mighty form, and very much starting to put himself as a firm championship contender, but, and crucially, only on the premise of his drop scores. He has, of course, had very consistent results so far across these opening 7 races, but in terms of outright points total, the top honours currently go to the likes of George Boothby and Marco Bischoff. So he is somewhat dependent on those drop scores, and it of course means that he still has to have some decent races into this latter portion of the season. But with the way that the young Dutchman has been driving, I have to say that it's not looking likely that he'll be having any disasters anytime soon. Hopefully there won't be a commentator's curse that comes back to bite him or me in that regard, but we'll have to see how they get on. And Misano, a very different track to what we had last week at Sneston. Of course, for one, significantly less grey overall. It may rain today, just to throw that one back at me. But of course, we were over in the UK for Sneston Race Circuit. A wonderful, technical, tricky circuit, but it does make overtaking very, very difficult. And there is a lot of challenging sections that really do force the driver to try to hook up the car in the best way possible through some very twisty, windy stuff. Now, Misano doesn't have the same level of twistiness. It does have a couple of awkward corners you could describe, but being quite a long-term, I think, MotoGP circuit, and of course has played hugs to a lot of GT racing and things like that, the overall layout of this circuit is very accommodating to much more open, flowy styles of corners with some big drafting opportunities for some overtaking. And we got a little bit of a heads up going into this one that potentially those in the McLaren, of which there are quite a few in this championship, could find themselves a little bit more in a competitive space than we have seen in recent weeks. And so, of course, for our championship leader, George Boothby, that potentially opens up some opportunities for him. Of course, Marco Bischoff in the Lamborghini, we know that that car has also gone quite well at some power circuits and things like that. So we could see a little bit of a shuffle around, and we'll have to see how all of that plays out. Over in a moment, we'll be making our way to our practice session, where drivers will be looking to dial in their car for the last remaining moments. In the meantime, let's have a little bit of a look at our track guide. And once again, I've queued up the wrong animation. Apologies on that. But regardless, 16 turns then of motorsports glory once again, now in the heart of Italy, where you make your way through that very twisty first complex. You have to be very cautious actually on the entry to turn 2. It's all about setting up that run through 3, then opening up the momentum through turn 6 onto that big long back straight. Turn 7, rather non-existent in the grand scheme of things. Hairpin at turn 8, that's a decent overtaking opportunity. Turn 10 can be, but it's one of those awkward braking zones where it sort of just keeps on going and you never really get the opportunity to have a big differential to your competitor. Then this is the big long run through turn 11, 12, 13, and then hard on the brakes in 14. Have to have a lot of faith and confidence in your car if you are going to get through there safely, cleanly, and quickly. And a little bit of a note to self as we were going through kind of some of the past experiences for yours truly in the world of racing on ACC, and on the opening lap, a little bit like Mineshaft at Kyalami. Tricky, those final sequence of corners of 12 and 13, when you're on slightly cold tyres and you're at your heaviest point. Got to be a bit careful, otherwise you may or may not have a Bentley flying across the circuit and narrowly missing causing a massive crash on the opening lap. But meanwhile, I'm sure these guys in the Pro Series will be looking to do some pretty stellar things, as they always do. So we'll be going over to them in just a moment to see exactly how you execute a race around this wonderful circuit. So server is up and running, so we can have a look and see how they are getting on. We often talk about how drivers utilize these final moments before we get into qualifying. Do you look to try to get yourself optimized for race conditions? Because we only have an hour worth of racing. That's still plenty of focus and need for good race pace, of course, over such a distance. But Less important than a 90-minute race, of course, that we sometimes have here every 3 rounds, and compared to the sorts of endurance races that we can also have on ACC as well. So it's not quite the same level of intensity and requirement to get that race pace dialed in, but it is, of course, very crucial. Qualifying, sometimes it's just about making sure that you stay out of the chaos, because when you've got a lot of very, very fast drivers all looking forward to competing for some very, very exciting prizes, you do tend to get just a little bit of chaos from time to time in these sorts of divisions. So it's very much a fine balance, and of course it's the likes of Tinko, the likes of George Boothby, Bischoff, Korekas, who, whilst maybe not having the best season so far in Season 11, clearly was a dominant force to be reckoned with last season, and before he went on to become a Pro Series champion. We're striking that balance, having the capability to really maximise both sides of your car's potential, both over a single lap and also in race trim as well. Very, very important for these drivers to be able to dial in to maximise all of their potential. Speaking of a man that hasn't had the greatest of seasons, he is currently the first one out on circuit, Mr. Korekas, now currently the number 2 car in the server. It's not a position that we were used to seeing him for quite a while. Of course, Marco Bischoff held that title for a very, very long time, the number 1 plate, of course, also being the number 1 man on the LFM platform, and then the young Lithuanian sawed his way through up the tables and took that plate over for a very long time, and then in recent weeks has ended up dropping back to the 2nd spot. So I'm sure he'll be keen not just to get himself back up to a number 1 on the LFM platform, but to get himself back up to a race-winning position where I'm sure he will feel like he deserves. Of course, someone that was able to extract a lot of pace out of the Porsche for a very long time, and we saw him as a regular in that car across the last few seasons. He's made this switch over to the 720S Evo, and he just hasn't quite seemed to have been able to dial in the pace in the same way that some of his teammates and other drivers have been able to. Of course, very much still competitive and quick, and we haven't really likely seen the best of Korekas in the last couple of weeks, where this car has been working a bit less effectively than it was earlier in the season. But that could very much likely change tonight, because we got the hint and the heads up from Tinko that the McLaren will likely be very, very quick around here. And that's fundamentally a bit for the similar kind of reasons as to why we've seen it be quick at Imola and also Spa. Around here, the McLaren is able to get away with running an extremely low amounts of rear wing, and as a result, it is a massively quick car in a straight line. It's able to overhaul the advantages that the Audi has recently been able to execute from the likes of Tinko van der Velde, and also Adam Spassky, who's put in a couple of fantastic results, the number 4 car in the server today, where the overall grunt, the V10 power that comes out of that Audi, is able to really fly out of certain corners and get the power down, accelerate on some relatively short straights, and get some pretty hefty top speed, whereas McLaren takes a bit more time to build up to that, but once it gets going, a very low profile car, if it's not having much drag on board, it will be absolutely flying. Meanwhile, someone has gone very quickly so far is Dario Iemolo, a man that we have seen in the Pro Series, of course, on many occasions. I think the last time he was here, he was either driving an I think he was driving an Aston Martin, if memory serves correct. We haven't had the Italian driver for a while, but decided to at least make a showing for his home race, and is, of course, in the Raging Bull, the Lamborghini, which has had a bit of a topsy-turvy kind of performance. Marco Bischoff, we've seen, has been quite often there or thereabouts with this car, and it's just one of those things where the Lambo, much like its predecessor, doesn't always seem to be the leading package to have. It's got a, it's got a good amount of straight line speed. It's got good agility. It's better in terms of high speed grip and time management than it used to be, but it's never really the overall peak. And so you're kind of in the midst of battles, but you're not always necessarily the one that is most likely in favour of coming away with a victory. Of course, we saw Hutchinson take a couple of victories last season, and this car really came alive at times in wet weather conditions. Not sure we'll be seeing any of that in the sunny skies of Italy this time around, but it does look like right now that Dario is putting in some pretty handy laps, a 32.3 and a quarter of a second clear right now of Marco Bischoff, the lead Lamborghini, of course, on so many occasions so far this season, and also then putting some pace over Grantis Carreras, who was topping the timing sheets earlier on in this session. Already seeing a few more of you following the channel as we welcome more of you over here onto Twitch, and it is fantastic to have so many of you here and continuing to expand this community. We're just 10 followers away from hitting 300 after only having this channel up for a couple of weeks or so, so do consider giving a follow if you are enjoying the action, as I tell you what, we are going to be in for a fantastic series of scraps this evening. I have no doubt about that. Tinko van der Velde also very much up there once again, as it is V10 heaven right now in the top 3, as Pogorelov in the McLaren, seeing a little bit of a hybrid of a couple of cars right now, but for the Motor Sharks esports team is up there. As who's that just went quicker? That is Eric Del Fanta. Good stuff from him, the fellow Italian. So right now Italians 1 and 2, and another man that hasn't been in the Pro Series for a while is Patrick Lipka, driving for Carbon Simsport, purple in the middle sector in that Lamborghini. And right now, Lamborghini's looking quick. McLaren's look like they have some pace as well. Audi on form too, so maybe not the same level of dominance as we've seen from certain manufacturers in the last couple of races. Of course, when we went Snetterton, it did really look like the Audis were the car to have. Similar sort of story at the likes of Indianapolis. But Misano right now may be starting to give a little bit of a shuffle. Of course, very difficult to tell so early on in just what is a practice session. Marco Bischoff improves up to P2 on a 32.4, not quite able to topple the Italian of Dario Iemolo right now, who of course will be looking to go very quickly. Who other Italian drivers do we have in here? We've got Matteo Vignoli in the Ferrari, so right now all Italian outfits for the Italian drivers, as the number 6 car goes soaring off into the gravel, and I will turn the cameras away from him to hopefully not put too much more pressure on the man in this practice session. Of course, no harm done fundamentally, but not ideally the way you want to be 60 seconds away from qualifying. George Boothby right now sitting P9 in this session. Someone is looking very quick at the moment. Of course, that delta was perhaps a little bit out of whack. I think that is the teammate, actually, of Dario Lorenzo Magnani, who is a name that I haven't seen in here before, so it's great to have more drivers joining. Of course, we have some staple drivers that have been with us during the championship. Nils Niox in the BS Plus competition, BMW, looking to again use all of that wealth of experience and talent that is in the cockpit of that car to extract the maximum and see what he can do. Of course, this car could actually fare pretty well in the race. It's tended to be pretty pacey in a straight line, and it takes care of its tyres fairly well too, and a relatively well-balanced platform. So, of course, in the hands of the German driver, could also be one that starts to be very competitive in the race. Currently only good enough for the top 10, but there is another element of this Misano circuit these drivers need to potentially consider, and that is the possibilities of corner cutting penalties. Of course, in qualifying, it's a simple lap invalidation. In the race, it can be a drive-through penalty, and whilst the pit lane around here is fairly short, of course, in such an overall short race, it is still very difficult to come back from losing such a heap of time, and it's pretty easy to get those corner cutting warnings around here because the curbs are extremely flat, and you do have kind of those little sleeping policemen on the outside, but they're not quite so volatile perhaps in promoting the car to jumping around left, right and centre when you do ride over them, as we might typically see at some other circuits. So it can mean that, oh, that was Patrick Lipka really pushing the limits there on then. Trooper better to do that now rather than in the race, of course, as we look to move over to qualifying. And just to round off that point, as who's going to be the first one away, I think it is Mr. Jardier, who, of course, back with us, the beloved streamer, is going to be heading away out of the pits and leading the queue. That's rather busy on exit. He's got Nils Knox and his teammate Correct, I think. Behind there's another car hidden in there as well, as that's going to get very chaotic. In actual fact, I think it's Boothby and Correctus making their way out through as they fly onto the circuit for the first time in this qualifying session. But yep, penalties in the race. You really find that these drivers will be looking to cut. Perfect example through that apex right there. Just able to cut through there. That's another one. There's another one. So just in that sequence alone, you could very easily rack up a couple of warnings in just a single sequence of those corners. And that's basically the story of this entire circuit the whole way around. The exit of turn 13, for example, you're carrying all of that momentum, getting yourself lined up for the braking zone of 14. Especially if you've got a bit of rear instability, so you're more hesitant to kind of get the lock on through that high-speed corner. You want the car to be nice and straight before you hit the brakes for the first time. It can mean that you run that bit wide and very easily can rack up those penalties. So expect to see, even from our very stellar lineup of talent in the top split of the Case King Pro Series, do expect to see some corner-cutting penalties this evening, and also a few very quick laps being unfortunately invalidated. But we will look to go on board with this man to lead us around here for a lap of the Misano circuit for the very first time. So getting the best exit that he can through turn 16 and getting the power down, using all that curb on the exit to carry through the momentum as he makes his way over to the left-hand side of the circuit for turn 1, breaking around the 50-meter board, cutting all over the curb on the apex of turn 1 to really open out turn 2 because it tightens up more than you might think. Flow through here in towards turn 3. Really need to make use of that entry curb. Don't run too wide through 4. Now hard on the brakes then, just before the 50-meter board again. Hook up the apex. A lot of camber in this corner. A little bit tricky though to get the power down. You see Jade really scrabbling at the wheel. Upshift early before you floor it through turn 6 and carry that momentum down towards turn 7. This little kick here under the bridge, and now under the bridge towards the braking zone of turn 8. Very wide on entry. Cut back across to the apex before squeezing on the power on the exit of 8. And then this is a tricky braking zone. It's a little bit of a double kink again, going very wide of turn 9 and then bring it around turn 10. A little bit tentative on entry, and this is somewhere that this McLaren likely going to lose a bit of time. Use all the AstroTurf on the exit of 10, but you can see Jody couldn't quite commit to the power as early as I think he would have wanted to, and now this is where the McLaren will start to reel in its competitors once more, flying through 11 in towards 12. Now the downshift starts coming through 13, wide onto the curb, and then open up the apex of 14. Use that camber to hook the car through there. Of course, a lot of downforce on board these cars, but it's still relatively heavy in the grand scheme of things. Not taking as much of a wide line on the entry to 15 as I would have expected, but good momentum nonetheless. Through 16, a little bit squirrely on the exit, but a fairly neat and tidy lap overall from Jardier in number 3 car, and it's going to be a 33.1. And it's a 33.3 for Niels Knox. George Boothby Carreras goes to the top of timing sheets now. The Veloce making it 1-2. Tinko van der Velde slots into P3. Lois Rainier now jumps to P5. Manson, Bischoff, Schwanker, Penninan rounding out the top 10 at the moment as all these laps start to fly on in. Adam Spansky, good lap from him. Right now, purple in the middle sector and up to the front row. Patrick Lipka doing the same. The Lamborghini's looking quick. Marco Bischoff looking quicker. The German driver. Could this be the day where he starts to get a little bit back of that form? Of course, a two-time Pro Series champion. We haven't seen him really lighting up the top of the leaderboards in a while. Of course, has made the switch over to the Lamborghini for the first time from what was being a staple stint in the K. Kramer Racing Esports Porsche. K. Kramer taking actually a few different cars amongst their drivers. Noah Eder back with us for this round as well, and Mercedes. Expect that car to be pretty handy around here as well. I remember that being a pretty speedy one. Noah Eder did invalidate that lap, but it would have been a 32.800, less than a tenth away than from his teammate, and 5 thousandths off this man that currently sits in P2. He's a tenth up, but Marco Bischoff is 2 tenths up on the exit of turn 10. A little bit lost on the exit though. Tinko going quickly as well in the final sequence of corners. I think Carreras though will jump up to the top of the timing sheets as he's looked absolutely formidable in the final sector. Jardier up to P3. Carreras about to topple those dreams though, because 32.4 from Carreras then. And what can Marco Bischoff do? Tinko van der Velde only good enough for a 32.5. It's a handy time, but it's not quite as good as the Lithuanian, who's looking to get back to his winning ways, as is this man. Yellow flag somewhere on the circuit. Hopefully no trouble caused. IMLO just 2,000 away from Carreras. What did Bischoff do? It's not going to be an improvement in the end because he invalidated the lap, but it would have been a 4.75. So Marco Bischoff invalidates what would have been a provisional pole lap, but Tinko van der Velde, I can tell you, is going mightily fast in the opening sector. We said that this circuit and car combination may not work quite in the same way as we saw at Snetterton. It does definitely look like it is closer, but Tinko van der Velde is doing what Tinko has done brilliantly so far this season, and that is just to be an absolute weapon on board this pink Audi. The number 8 car absolutely flying once more, as is Iamlo, just a little bit further behind him on circuit. The pair of them up by 1/10 of a second. Marco Bischoff up by 2/10 himself. Noah Reeder, I said the Mercedes could be quick, and there's the proof. A 32.415, purple in the middle sector. Absolutely blistering pace from the Mercedes, and that car, it takes the curve very nicely. It's a powerhouse around here, but now is Eric Del Fanta going super quick, almost going too wide on the exit of turn 8, as wide as you like through there. The Italian extracting everything at the moment. Correcas doesn't look like he'll improve on his lap. Iamalo's going very, very quick, 1 to 2/10 faster, and he's looking to maintain that advantage. Van der Velde loses out on that attempt to 4.50 from the Dutchman. What's it going to be from the Italian as he heads towards the line? It's looking pretty good. A 32.2 on the way, I think it might be, and it is. It's almost a 0.1. A 2.05 from the Italian driver's home circuit, and he's joined almost by Noah Reeder in P2. Who was actually jumping up? It wasn't Noah Reeder. He's still out of lap. It was Marco Bischoff that does a 4.27. And just a little bit behind the pace of his teammate. Eric Del Fanta now rounding out his lap. It's going to be good enough for top 4 by the looks of it. Oh, just misses out for the time being. Top 5 for the McLaren driver and the lead McLaren out of all that. So it's Lamborghini, Mercedes, Lamborghini, Audi, McLaren inside the top 5. We came into this thinking it might be McLaren domination. Right now, Lamborghini's looking like the car to have, and the Mercedes isn't looking too shabby either. Fantastic stuff from these drivers, as they have just under half of their session left available. George Boothby improving as well. 2/10 up for your championship leader, as he currently sits on a 0.7. He would have been on a 0.5 last time round. He invalidated it. It's a good hairpin for the number 5 car, but he does lose a little bit of time heading in towards the final corner. How brave does he feel? Does he just want to get it onto the board? He is going to get it onto the board, but it's only going to be good enough around P8 and displace. I think his sister teammate does a little bit better than that in the end. Goes P7, as a lot of drivers abandoned their laps to head into the pits, as Tinko also does the same, improves to a 0.327, but still solid 10th away from Dario Iamalo, and Spansky slots into P4 for the number 4 car on a 32.415. Let's see who else is out on circuit. Jan Drexler just jumps up the order, I do believe, trying to find whereabouts to, only to 29th place. We've got Pogorelov that is improving on his lap as well. 1.7 seconds up on the Delta. We'll have to see what that translates to overall. We've also got the SDL car of Coots a bit further up on a good lap. Pogorelov invalidates on the exit of the final corner. It would have been a 33.2. So it would have put him around 25th position. Meanwhile, Michael Frey looking to improve in the Porsche, and a nice livery on board this 31 car. I don't believe that we have seen the Swiss driver rocking a livery here in the Case King Pro Series up until now. So it's nice to see him join in the action as well. And that's number 31 car for next Neo-N Racing. Seeing a lot more of these cars, but that kind of split theme livery, but looking rather snazzy in that Porsche 992. I do like the contrast in the lettering with the paint on either side. So very nice stuff from the Swiss driver as he makes his way through a final sector. This is somewhere that the Porsche should be pretty handy. Of course, good acceleration out of that hairpin and very nimble on its toes through those last couple of corners. Gets the power down towards the start-finish line. He is going to improve by quite a chunk. But might he scrape the top 30? It does. 28th place for Michael Frey. Pogorelov improving once more as well, as is this man. Dennis Vitschorka, 10th of a second up on his time, as Marco Bischoff bringing out the yellow flag. And he did improve on that lap. Only good enough for P4, a 32.370. Eric Del Fanta goes up to P2 and is the first man to get within a 10th of a second of Iamalo in the McLaren. So extracting some very good pace. The Italians looking very, very good so far in this qualifying session, whether it be in the Lamborghini or in the McLaren, between Iamalo and Del Fanta. But a fantastic story so far, and a really good mix of manufacturers in those top portions of the field. Iamalo's just started up a lap himself. We've got Bailey Thompson in the number 30 car, who I think is also a new name as well, the British driver for the 2S community team. And also, of course, reminder to those, reminder and also info to those that may be new, as we are welcoming more and more new people to the stream, and I see some of those in the chat already with some pretty fantastic supports for Grantis Correcus, I must say. But a warm welcome to all of you continuing to join and find your way over to the world of LFM. But these numbers in the server correlate to their relative elo to one another in these servers. So if you see a driver like Bailey Thompson right now with number plates that is pretty high, but the position currently right now in the server is comparatively low, that means they are doing very, very well and looking to move themselves up in the world of LFM ranks, and very similar system to iRacing, if that is something that you are familiar with. Almost an improvement for George Boothby, a 0.587, but not quite good enough to shuffle his way up the order or improve on his previous lap time. We've got Magnani in the number 28 Lamborghini looking to find a tenth of a second. He's there or thereabouts. He lost time Michael Frey, I think, trying to get out of the way of the BMW in the background there. And we've also got Jardier Schwanker on Mishima as well, currently down in P20. Wouldn't have expected to see him down there, but that's an invalidation. And there's the formidable turn 13 I was talking about. What about Jardier? He is barely into his lap, but he's already found a 10th. What about Robin Schwanker? He is coming through turn 10, I think that is now, set up this a long run down the back straight, and he is finding time as well, looking to get up towards the pointier end of the grid. Iamolo going quickly there or thereabouts with his previous lap time. No one really improving too much inside of the top 10. This man who's got some support in the chat, Lithuanian driver, is currently on a small improvement. He's lost that through the hairpin though. He's got good drive and a pretty nice slipstream from Albin Manson, I think that is, in the fellow McLaren. Just up in front, it's Magnani starting to get some pace as well. Niels Niles is there or thereabouts with his time delta. He'll be across the line in just a moment, as we are now just 3 followers away from the mighty 300 mark. What about Niels Niles though? What's he going to do? Only good enough for P15. Just not able to find pace at the moment. Jardier was improving on his lap. He's lost a little bit in the tail end of the final sector, trying to be brave in the last couple of corners. They've only got a minute and a half left, so for a lot of these drivers, Jardier will just about, oh, it's going to be mightily close. He may get 2 more attempts, but it may be losing out by an absolute hair's width when he next comes across the line. But anyone else crossing the line right now, this will be their final lap, as Jardier currently sits in P17. Pogorelov improving. Whereabouts is Iamolo? He's starting his final lap now. No further improvements at the moment. Tingo van der Velde, even with his delta in the opening sector of the lap mark of Bischoff, getting a lap underway. He's got Noah Reeder. No, that's one of the other Mercedes in the field. Actually, we'll have to catch up with whoever that is. Correcus is a bit further out. He's found a 10th. So is Iamolo, though, in the opening portion of the lap, so nothing right now can be called in this final bid for pole position to try to stay out of the chaos. And Adam Spansky is the first driver inside the top 10 to go back to the pits, and no further improvements for the number 4 car. He will start no higher than P6, and right now Correcus is trying to at least move himself up ahead of the Audi, and if nothing else, could be looking to target a top 5. He just about keeps it within the bounds of legality. Through he goes in towards this final double sequence of corners into 15. Iamolo still flying in that Lamborghini. Del Fanta finding a bit of time as well. What's it going to be for the last season's champions, Correcus, who is trying to see if he can find a bit more form? It's going to be a marginal improvement. Is it? Up to P6 he goes, and it is super tight right out in the field. Cars everywhere as they abandon their laps. So that is qualifying almost over and done with, as Noah Reeder is on a lap. Patrick Lipka finds himself on a lap. What's it going to be for the Italian driver, though? He's trying to carry all the speed out of the final corner. Del Fanta is not going to do it. Can Iamolo improve? He does do a 0.1, a 0.185 in the Raging Bull, and it might be Italian glory with a big slide of celebration. Patrick Lipka's going quick, though, as well, up by a tenth of a second. Maybe he'll sprawl the party inside the top 5. V10 can't quite do it. Oh dear, that was a rather mighty impact over the line he goes, and into the wall. BA, what about Magnani, the next of the Italian drivers? He does improve. He gets the lap in, only good enough for P11 in the end. Anyone else on a lap? Michael Frey coming towards the line. Jonathan Clifford on a lap as well. I think Matty DeCampo currently sitting in P20 is looking to improve. Michael Frey, big final sector from the Swiss driver. 3/10 up and he goes up to P25. Hopefully be relatively happy with that one. Noah Reader, though, could he be a dark horse in the number 13 Mercedes? He is still on a lap. He is still finding time, but it's there or thereabouts. He's got good pace, but I don't think it's quite going to be good enough to displace the Lamborghini that sits at the top of this timing sheet as he comes flying through the final corner. It was a mighty turn 16, but I don't think it's going to be good enough for pole. It is good enough for P3, though. A fantastic run through the final corner sees the German get himself a top 3 spot. Fantastic stuff from him, and I think that will be the end of qualifying then. What a fantastic qualifying session that was to lead us into what will be 60 minutes of racing goodness around here at Misano. We'll have a look through the starting order properly in just a moment, but that gives us very exciting prospects because we have a really good mixture of manufacturers, some new names as well to the pointy end of the grid where they have the championship contenders breathing down their necks. How are they going to cope with the pressure? Will the home territory around the circuit look to inspire them to keep their head and keep their cool? We'll have to wait and see, but we have some fantastic prospects going into this one. And Dario Iamolo returning to the series with a bang and doing it in style to do it his home circuit as well. So fantastic stuff there from him as we look to run through the grid, hopefully in just a moment. Any second now for the number 26 car. There we go, as Iamolo starts on pole position then. Fantastic stuff from the Italian driver, and he's joined by his fellow compatriot in the Italian job McLaren. The McLaren finally coming good for Del Fanta. No Reader, good stuff from him as well, returning with a pretty solid effort in qualifying there as well in that Mercedes, and that could be a pretty handy car in the race as well, as long as those front tyres don't burn out too quickly. Tinko van der Velde, 4th place for him. I think he'll be relatively happy with that because he sits in front of this man, Marco Bischoff, who is P2 in the standings, and then the man that currently leads this championship, George Boothby, in the McLaren, not quite able to get himself into winning ways, and he'll be looking at Del Fanta there and wondering where did that pace come from. So will this man, Carreras, continuing to search pace all of this season so far, but he's right there with his teammates, so definitely closing the gap bit by bit. Patrick Lipka, great stuff from him to get himself into P8, and again, a solid result from Adam Spansky. He would have wanted to have been a little bit more on the heels of Tinko van der Velde. Of course, he has been matching the pace of the Dutchman pretty well in recent events. Valentin Barriet starts in 10th place with Lorenzo Magnani, the next of the Lamborghinis, in P11. Matteo Vignoli, the next of the Italians, as it makes it a 6th row of the grid Italian lockout. And then Robin Schwanker in the Team 1 FF number 7 McLaren then. And then followed up by Albin Manser, the Swede, who sits in P14. I think we'll be pretty happy with that one. And Grant is currently sitting in P8, P7 in this grid, to answer the question in the chat. Luke Addison starts in P15. Good effort from the South African driver, with Jardier only good enough P16 in the end. Still trying to adapt to that car and not quite maybe find the same level of pace as he would have been wanting to against the benchmark of his teammates. Of course, so easy to compare yourself amongst one another. The Estonian of Renault Koets starts in P18 with Lois Arania, the next of the STL Esports cars, starting right behind him in P19. Mattia De Campo rounds out the top 20 and makes it the next batch of McLarens, of which there is quite a few, with the likes of Kazuki Omoshimi, a race winner from Valencia earlier this season. A Japanese driver really struggling to find pace in recent races. Bailey Thompson, a good Pro Series debut for him, starts in 22nd place. Pogorelov found his way up to 23rd position in the end. And then we have James... I don't know how that X is going to be pronounced because it's a French name. So I'm going to go with James, who sits in 24th position in the Ferrari. And then Michael Frey starts in 25th place. Dennis Wietschorker starts in 26th. And then we have Dennis Bodenberger, who was the other Mercedes. He starts in 27th position. Peter is ready. These drivers are firing up their engines. That sounds like a good evening of action as far as I'm concerned. Marco Wong returns to the track alongside his fellow Hong Kong citizen with Chris Sang in 29th place. A little bit surprised to see Chris actually that far down the grid. Has been a weapon multiple times we have seen him in the Pro Series, but of course could look to do a fantastic drive through field. This circuit has overtaking opportunities for days. Jan Drexler rounds out the top 30 with Oliver Hagstrom in 31st place. Claudius Lucek in 32nd with Luca Balconi, I think the last of the Italians in the Ferrari. Starts 33rd with Jonathan Clifford in the 25 car. The American driver starts in 34th position. Then we have Øystein Kohlberg Brenham, the Norwegian driver, if I've got my Scandinavian flags right, with Nico Pennon then rounding out the order and making it to the end of the grid there as our drivers look to get themselves all sorted out, ready on the formation lap as they try to get those tyres dialed in, warmed up and ready to go. 60 minutes of action, looking like very low winds at the moment. So with the weather looking pretty dry for the first 30 minutes, temperatures are hot, not looking the most likely that we might have some rain involved, but never fear, because the Pro Series is always putting on a fantastic show. And yeah, great qualifying for Niels Knox. As you can see, the BOP maybe around here not favouring the BMW too much, but of course a wealth of talent and competency as one of the McLarens go flying off into the distance. Who was that? That was Grantus Correctus, who now comes to a complete halt. A little bit of an interesting formation lap strategy there from your reigning champion. It's taking an awful long time to get going again. Hopefully he will, and he does. He'll have to get a little bit of a move on and get those brakes up to temperature. Expect to see that Veloce car starting to fly back through. There he goes, and starts to regain his position. Bit of an interesting one. Maybe had some sort of hardware issue. Did obviously come to quite an abrupt stop. Maybe testing out his pedals, something like that. But it does look like that technical issues are not harming him too much, thankfully, and that he will be able to start this race. But it'll be this man, Dario Iamolo, a debut pole position and his debut in the Pro Series for Season 11 with that Lamborghini for the Gatterchain Ballas Esport team. And that car is going to be pretty difficult, I think, in the opening stint of this race. But watch out for that McLaren and the Mercedes behind. And of course, Tinko van der Velde, who has been in fine form as they round out the final corner to get the action underway for round 8 of the Case King Pro Series. Will be in Italian, winning an Italian car on Italian soil, or will it go the way of another competitor? We'll have to wait and see, but it's green lights away. It's a great start for Noah Reader on the second row of the grid. He'll be looking to take the fight to Tinko on the run in towards the first corner. How's it going to fare as they all fly through? Iamolo holds on to the lead, but Noah Reader blasts his way in towards P3, but it's wide for Iamolo through turn 2. Give an opportunity to Del Fanta. Noah Reader almost looking to make it 3 wide as they head in towards the next turn, but he defends on the inside line, bouncing barrier, trying to make moves in towards this corner. But let's contact Noah Reader. Oh, and a big crash. Iamolo manages to go around and keep himself going, but it's Del Fanta down the lead. Noah Reader down the order. One of the STL esports cars has fallen down as well, as it's now Tinko van der Velde finds himself in P2. He stays out of trouble, but he's got damage on board that car. Meanwhile, it's almost 3 wide on the run in towards turn 8. Marco Bischoff side by side with Korekis, and the Lamborghini driver's going to come out on there. And Ruspansky bouncing barrier also as they fly now in towards turn 10. Helicab all today, because also further down the order, Michael Frey has gone around in turn 8 just to try to keep up with the action. I said there'd be overtaking opportunities, and it's kicking off from the very start as the first drag race down the back straight kicks off, but it's a dream start for Eric Del Fanta, looking to take a home victory, and there's pressure being applied right now to Lorenzo Magnani from the STL esports cars. Renault Cou's trying to go on the inside in towards turn 13 and be brave to do it there. I don't think he's going to be able to make it stick, as now a little bit swapping of positions potentially as Iamolo's immediately back on the attack. I said that car would be quick to start with, and he does not want to waste any time at all getting back towards that P1 spot. The number 26 car trying to apply pressure to Tinko van der Velde. I think Tinko may have made a mistake as a gap is now at 2.3 seconds to Delphanta Lamborghini towards the inside and turn 1 on just the first flying run in towards his lap. He can't make it stick and he has to stay in pursuit of that car, but all the time this is helping Delphanta. It's a 3-second lead for the McLaren driver. Could he take a debut win in the Pro Series? He's been up there on a few occasions when he was driving the Audi. He's been a little bit away from there for a while, but he's now looking to make that change, as I need to go to Helical once again because we've got Lois Rainier side by side now with Bailey Thompson, the British driver, trying to go around the outside of the Frenchman. Can't make it stick. Meanwhile, who's that losing out? No Reed again in piles. The number 35 car is James now under pressure from Albert Manson, the next of the STL Esports cars that go flying on down in towards turn 8. Omashima having to fend from Noah Reed as well. He can't make it stick. Manson can't make it stick on the number 35 car either. What about his teammate of Oliver Hagstrom? He's putting pressure onto Lutzek now. Down in towards turn 10 they go, and the overtaking moves the blaze up and down the field. I can't keep up with every single one of them, but we'll do our best. And the Swede does look like he's got a pretty good run, but now the drag race down towards the hairpin takes place again. But I've got to cut to this action up front because Tinko van der Velde, he has lost out. Dario Yamalo, and he's gone deep. And now it's George Boothby, the championship competition. They've got Marco Bischoff right on their case as well. Side-by-side action through turn 15. Now on the run in towards 16. Bischoff nowhere to go. Can't make it 3 wide. Surely he doesn't. He waits. He sets up the exit. Tinko van der Velde has covered off George Boothby beautifully. But the V10 power of the Lamborghini, he can't get the power down. And look at that. The Lithuanian menacingly looking in the background. George Boothby trying to go around the outside. A little bit of contact on the entry to turn 1. Thankfully, no harm done. But Tinko van der Velde holds on to P3. It's now 3.3 seconds between Delphanta and now the McLaren all the way around the outside. A brilliant move for Krekas as he tries to put pressure around the outside of the Lamborghini. Adam Spansky now watching, trying to see if there is an opportunity. But I don't think that as they come through this sequence of corners that the the Lamborghini is going to lose the position. Meanwhile, Jardier fighting it out with the likes of Lipka. Now it's Renault Roots trying to go down the inside of the Lamborghini in towards turn 8. It's absolute chaos here up and down the field, but this is what we love about the Pro Series. The number 19 car gets ahead. The Ferrari now side by side. That is Luke Anderson, the South African, trying to make a cutback towards the inside of turn 10, perhaps, as he's got Magnani, who will set up a good exit. That looked like a bit of a wide moment for Renault Coots, but how will they fare on the next drag race? We'll catch up with the lead back just for a moment, as is Lamborghini, followed by McLaren, and that's Adam Spansky absolutely blinding his way down. He's gone to the outside of the McLaren because the Audi's got the legs. He's trying to stick around the outside of the reigning champion. He's kept his foot in the Valentine barrier, trying to get involved in this one as well. Surely can't find opportunity through there. Lipka almost conceding a position behind, down to Renault Coots, but Adam Spansky does not allow the Frenchman through, who'll be trying to help out his teammate. Does he send on the inside? No. In towards the final corner they go. Delphanta then leads by 3 seconds to Iamalo, who just set the fastest lap of the race and is immediately on the attack, bringing the gap down to 2.5 seconds as they head onto what is just about the third lap. I'm already losing count. There's been too much chaos. Oh, and there's contact on the entry into turn 2. Johnny is going to get collected. And who was that? That was Renault Coots. Now that is Luke Addison. Cars left, right, and centre. Someone skipping across the grass entirely. That's Niels Knox. That's experience for you. That if in doubt, run away from the chaos and make other positions in the process. Let them sort it out amongst themselves. It's all kicking off though as we'll go to Helical once more because it's almost 3 wide in towards this middle straight as they fly now down towards turn 8 once more. And that's a lot of pressure. Von Mishima is now coming under from Noah Reader in the Mercedes, and also the Ferraris behind queuing up for opportunities. Who will come out on top? Noah Reader storming down the inside. He has covered off the McLaren surely here, and that is the number 35 car, and with just behind Manson and Vitshoka going side by side as well. But it is Manson that is going to come out on top in all of this one. But what about this? As Addison sent it, and Bailey Thompson has gone around. And I would love to catch on the replay, but I just don't think I can look away from a battle for a second. The stewards are going to be having the worst time of their lives, I think. So far, we'll be here for a while until we find out some of these decisions. But it's no Reader that holds on to position because of that mistake from Addison. Meanwhile, who was that making a mistake? That was Kazuki Omashima now being left out on the outside, almost a little bit of contact on the run in towards turn 15, but he does just about hold on to it. There's 5 the contact behind, as that's Oliver Hagstrom now that's gone around. That was Claudius Lucek that has made a mistake there. And who is that getting involved in all of this? It's Pogorelov with the likes of Jonathan Clifford trying to make up some positions, and they have capitalised just a little bit. And just about, this battle seems to have calmed down. Maybe not, because Lucek's gone very deep in towards turn 2. But he does cover off the position in the end. Let's have a little bit of a gander at what is going out at front. Do I know when penalties get applied? I do. I have a wonderful little spreadsheet that the stewards will be keeping up to date for me. However, we may be here a while until we get some updates, because they're going to be looking through a lot of replays. But I will do my best to keep you informed and in the know. When I know, you will know. But all I do know is that right now, George Boothby trying to set up a move on his championship rival, as is the likes of, who was that game very close in the mid-pack? That was Lois Rainier right on the back of Magnani. Maybe they'll have a drag race of their own. We know, though, this Audi is very quick in a straight line, and he's able to keep at bay the McLaren and the Lamborghini that follow in hot pursuit. But they've got to be careful about track 1. Is drive-through penalty for Norita. That will be for the lap 1 incident. The stewards then coming down very harshly, unless after track limits, but I would have to imagine that chances are that is for track limits. My goodness. Oh dear, Norita really not having a great time at all, as Luke Anderson losing positions, plummeting down the order through the final couple of corners. Here goes, there goes Norita diving into the blitz immediately. I don't think it's going to do him any benefit to stay on circuit, because there is action absolutely impure for Chaos. Anderson losing out, then all of that. Jardier just about holding on to P9 for the moment. It's getting very close, though, for the podium positions. Also, Iamolo crucially closing the gap towards Eric Del Fanta for the lead. Just about 2.5 seconds now. He was 0.2 quicker on the last lap, but Del Fanta keeping so far a cool head. But it does look like it'll be an Italian shootout, because right now it's your championship protagonist that sits in P3, 4 and 5, and Grant Carecas, your reigning champion, trying to put himself in the midst as well. As they fly again once more in towards turn 10. We've just hit 303 followers. I'm glad you're enjoying this action as much as I am, and be sure to stick around, because we've only been here for 9 minutes. I guarantee you it's going to be the same all the way to the end. I won't have a voice by the end of it, but I'll be loving every second and see if the stewards have put any queries together in their evaluations whilst we keep an eye on these podium strokes. We've got a 5-second penalty for the number 13 car, and that belongs to Norita. So that'll be for the lap 1 incident, so as well as his drive-through, getting a penalty for causing the incident that saw the Italian of Iamolo relinquish the lead on the exit of turn number 4. And he was actually relatively fortunate. He did actually manage to get going again. And then Tinko went straight into the back of Norita. And I think that then sent the Mercedes round. So it was double punishment, unfortunately, for the German driver. Meanwhile, Lipko still applying the pressure to Jardier in his Lamborghini. Can't do anything just yet. And to let you know, the stewards have made it a grand total of 49 seconds into this race. And I think we can guarantee that there's definitely been a few more incidents since then. It's not that they're doing a bad job, they do a wondrous job, but this is what the sort of action and drama that the Pro Series delivers every single week, and is giving them a very tough time of keeping up with the inquiries. So stay tuned to see what happens with penalties from there. But right now, positions amongst your top 10 are as they stand on track, with Del Fanta leading the way ahead of a recovering and hard-charging Iamolo, who set another fastest lap of the race last time around. Currently 2.5 seconds away from your race leader. Then it's 4.5 seconds almost to Tinko van der Velde. That's not a position that we have been used to seeing him in recent events, and that he has got George Boothby. That's the wrong car. Harder charging behind the Audi as we go on board the rear diffuser of this V10 roaring monster, as he looks back towards one of the winningest drivers in the Pro Series. Someone that might be about to make a move is Lois Rainier, he is looking very close to the back of Magnani, and he's sent it down the inside of the hairpin, almost in the back of Adam Spansky. A little bit of argy-bargy there, and Lorenzo might not be too happy about that. Expect some flashing of lights from the Lamborghini. I think I just saw a little bit of a glimpse of them there, and now he's got some pressure from another Italian driver, and that is Vignoli in the Ferrari sitting behind. Not the fastest in a straight line, but will be very quick at the tail end of the stints because it takes care of its tyres very, very well. As meanwhile, back towards your top three, George Boothby looking quicker and quicker, maybe taking a little bit better care of his tyres. The Audi has previously been known to munster its tyres, so does the Lamborghini. And you can see Marco Bischoff starting to drop a little bit back, but they just, neither of them able to drop back into the paths of those two McLarens, just enough to give them an opportunity for an overtake. But George Boothby, this is the closest that he has been in a short while. I do actually need to quickly check down here for the scrap for P17, as that's number 35 car trying to send out the inside of Vignoli. Couldn't make that one stick. But what about as we go back towards this scrap for P3? George Boothby absolutely on the case of the Audi. We're on board the front diffuser splitter, 1 of the 2. Get your aerodynamic devices right, but that's not the point, because we've got speedy action down towards the back straight, but he can't get alongside. Does anything about ascend? No, it's a half defensive move. A little bit of an early turn in from Tinko just to discourage that a little bit. What about Lois Rayner? Does he have better luck? And the answer is yes, and that might be Magnani trying to fly through there. Of course, the STL car actually made his way through, and yeah, it's almost an identical incident, but this time Adam Spansky maybe keeping his nose in a little bit further. He can't. And number 35 car of James, I just can't work it out. The surname, I do apologise to the Frenchman. I'll have a look after the stream, as that is Vignoli now putting him under pressure. It's a 4-way fight taking place right now for what is P16. Adam Spansky tumbling down the order, losing a whole heap of positions relative to where we would be used to seeing him, and just has not managed to dial in the same sort of pace as Tinko van der Velde. And that is really demonstrating how special of a driver Tinko is, because even when the car is not at its best, he's just able to go a little bit further on. And I'm going to go then, based on the advice of the chat, of Arcabex for the number 35 car. Wasn't quite sure. X's and French start to confuse me a little bit because they seem to chop and change the pronunciation, but I've got approval from Twitch chat. Oh dear, just as I've said his name, look what you've done. The 35 car of Arcabex has gone around. He's recovered just a little bit, and now damage on the front left corner. I shouldn't have kept the camera on him so long. A commentator cursed him by trying to pronounce his name right. I am sorry to Arcabex. And now as he heads in towards turn 10, I'm going to go 50-50 on who's to blame for that one. I was encouraged to spend more time with him. Now as Lipka tries to apply the pressure over towards Jardier, still unable to get past, as Luke Addison may be able to do something about Vito Kakani in towards turn 13. No, it doesn't look like it. The Ferrari just not able to get enough alongside on the entry in towards the braking zone. I am very sorry to James there. I have certainly not aided his situation, but at least now when he goes back to watch this, of what was possibly a race-defining moment, his name was pronounced fully and correctly in all of that. But a very disappointing moment for the 35 car, who's already on the case. We'll give it a second try, because he's trying to see if he can get past Jonathan Clifford on the run towards turn 1. Yellow flag for Noah Reid, who's off in the gravel, and I think that Mercedes, it can be a bit of a twitchy car at times. They're renowned for letting go at 130R around Suzuka. I can't find my replay button quick enough. I'm hoping I might just about be able to catch it. As we'll see what happens to the German driver. We are going to be able to see as he heads down in towards this tricky sequence. I think it's going to be under braking. I think the car's going to swing one way, and then the next, no, he just goes way too wide and catches the gravel on entry, and that's a one-way ticket into the kitty litter. And unfortunately for the number 13 car, will head over to the pits, retiring from this race. And what looked like such a good performance on the cards for the K Kramer Racing Esports driver has unfortunately now found himself in a retiring position. Very disappointing for him. Meanwhile, the gap has somewhat stabilized out at the front, but those two at the front really putting the pace in this race, because the likes of Tinko, Boothby, Bischoff, though they're not particularly battling, in actual fact, pulling... Oh, that's a mistake for Tinko van der Velde. Will that open up an opportunity for George Boothby? It doesn't allow him to get quite close enough, but it just starts to unsettle potentially the confidence of the Dutchman. It's not a great run through turn 2 either. He's going to run a little bit wide there potentially. They've got to be mindful of track limits. George Boothby absolutely staying on the case. It's what he's usually so good at, just being patient. See him still scrabbling at the wheel. I said the car might be a bit kinder to his tyres, not with driving like that, as they both avoid the curbs over the exit of turn number... Where is that? That's turn 6. So that flying left-hander, very tricky, especially as the tyres start to wear down. See, more aggressive on the entry, a bit more bite from the front end of this McLaren, as he now looks for an opportunity towards turn 10, primarily to see if he can set up something. But watch that Audi start to get the power down. It's monstrous out of turn 10, and George Boothby has to be significantly more alongside if he wants to promote an opportunity. And I don't think he's going to get it on this occasion once more. 17 minutes has gone by, 43 left to go. So still plenty of possibilities. And of course, when we get to the pit window, it will all be about strategy. Will George Boothby, will Marco Bischoff look to go for an undercut? It could pay dividends for track position, but it might not help them in the long term. Patrick Lippica right on the diffuser of Jardier, but could not make a move stick. Down towards the hairpin. Matty DeCampo also getting a little bit cozy with Nils Knox, I do believe. BMW not having the greatest Australian speed around him. Meanwhile, side-by-side action between the number 18 of Oliver Hagstrom and Luca Balconi in the Ferrari, who gets a move done. The stability of the Ferrari platform able to soar his way past. And let's see if we can catch exactly how the Italian driver did it. So we'll go on board with the Ferrari. They were side by side on the run up in towards 13. In actual fact, we'll see it from the external camera because we can't quite catch it from there. It was still a drag race because, of course, the McLaren fighting back on top speed, but in the end, just didn't have the grip around the outside line to get his nose ahead on the entry. Of course, very difficult then to hold on to position in towards the braking zone. So Balconi does come out on top and takes the position in the Ferrari, using all of its strengths to his advantage. Then, meanwhile, Bodenberger applying the pressure onto the back of Nico Pennon, who's made his way up from the back of the grid to 23rd position. Driver that, again, usually very good at picking his way through the order. I can tell you, though, Dario Aiemolo flying on the last lap of the race, 32.9. Not a fantastic lap this time around, but he still looks to be relatively on par with Del Fanta. But that gap has gone from 3 down to 2.5, now down to 2 seconds between the two leading Italians, who find themselves 5.5 seconds ahead of this Gackle, whereas still a 3, almost a 4-way scrap for the last of the podium positions. And George Boothby just showing his nose in the mirrors of the young Dutchman, just trying to see if he can find any opportunity to put him off. We did see that small mistake on the exit of turn 16 from the Dutchman. The only error so far from the Audi driver, but it shows the fact that he is really feeling the pressure here. We saw him drive incredible at Brands Hatch, where he put on a defensive masterclass over exactly the same car behind him. That was, of course, for the race win, and he had some interesting the lawnmower lines, as they were generally referred to around there. He can't get away with it there, but look how much of the entry curve they are using. That looked a little bit deep from the Lamborghini driver of Marco Bischoff. He squares up the exit, but don't give Carreras too much of an opportunity, because he will dive it down the inside of a gap if he thinks he can get the nose in there for that McLaren, which does seem to be a little bit at a disadvantage. Let's head on board the rear diffuser once more of this Audi, absolutely flying its way down the back straight and just able to keep that McLaren at bay time and time again. And George Boothby, even in the slipstream, just not able to do anything about it. Of course, the interesting thing is, very similar chassis and powertrains. That's deep under brakes for Boothby. Not enough to open up an opportunity for Marco Bischoff, but just allows Tinko van der Velde to breathe slightly. Do we see any of this group dive into the pits straight away? And the answer is no. Not massively surprising, because, of course, these tyres are going to be taking quite a beating. And whilst you might get track position and a little bit of an undercut early on, you will be in a very difficult position at the tail end of the race if you go into the pits too soon. Although someone that's going for the gamble is Renault Koets in the number 19 car. So, and the same goes for Adam Spansky. That's brave in that car, because the Audi not likely to hold on to its tyres too well. We can see some damage on board the front ends of these cars. So I think all of these drivers looking to just do a little bit of repairs to their cars and maybe overall benefit from a little bit of pace as a result. Let's see if we can catch up with some stewards' inquiries. There's a 5-second penalty for the number 24 car. Marco Bischoff sends it down the inside of George Boothby. There's contact to the apex, and Bischoff, the man that sits P2 in the standing, goes around at the hairpin. And controversy here at Misano as two of the championship protagonists come together, and we'll watch it again because Marco Bischoff, it looked like he sent it from pretty far away. He might say different. George Boothby, how did it look from on board the Lamborghini driving? You can see pretty even on the run down towards turn 10. Marco Bischoff, he was kind of showing his nose, sends out the inside, big surprise on the apex there, and it gets to the middle of the corner. And it just looks to me like there's a little bit of side-by-side contact going a bit deep under brakes from Marco Bischoff. And, well, of course, I'm sure the stewards will look at it. They'll have more camera angles than we do. Unfortunately, I can only look at it once, but not what the German driver would have needed. And definitely agree with the comments in the chat. Strategically, if you do pit now, you could end up being a lap down and finding yourself amongst those that are still out. In actual fact, we're going to see a little bit of that now because, look, all of those that have arrived in the pits, there was Adam Spansky on your screen. They are going to arrive right in the mid-pack, so that could really hurt them in terms of the traffic. It's not so bad. And there's Michael Frey right in the middle of all of this. Jardier, who has had Patrick Lipka breathing down his neck the entirety of this race so far, will be screaming for that little Porsche to get out of the way, and I've almost done it for him. Down the microphone, Michael Frey does abandon ship, I think, eventually on the outside of turn 6, and would have compromised Jardier a bit there. Is it enough for Patrick Lipka to send one? It's Lamborghini versus McLaren again on the entry in towards turn 8, but this time it's not a dive bomb on the same nature from the number 20 car. Meanwhile, let's track down the number 24 car in the server. That's Nico Pendon. So despite the moves up the order, obviously not all clean because he has got a 5-second penalty. 5 seconds for the number 27 car as well. That is Oliver Hagstrom, who's got big problems right now. In actual fact, no, it's Luca Balcerni that's got the big problems in that number 36 Ferrari. He's got Oystein Kolbo Brennan behind in that BMW. Trying to hold on to 28th position. 15-second time penalty for the number 17 car. Who is that for? Because it's a hefty penalty. It's Valentin Barrier, currently sitting in P6, and that is really going to hurt his result then. And that was for contact, by the looks of it, with the number 4 car. That was Adam Spansky. So that's what sent the Audi down the order, and with his pit stop, I don't think that's going to have really helped him in the long run, although, of course, he will have had the opportunity at the very least to repair some damage. Meanwhile, my goodness, so we're up to about 5 minutes now in this race. 15-second time penalty for the number 23 car. That goes to the likes as Bodenberger and James Arkabex come into the pits. That is Luke Addison that gets 15 seconds. Number 34 has a 15-second time penalty as well, and that car belongs to Claudius Lucek. So I think that was for that incident we saw in the final sector. And the last incident that these stewards have wonderfully caught up to is a 10-second time penalty for the number 35 car, and that is for James Arkabex. And of course, anyone that has had penalties prior to the pit stops, they will serve those penalties in the stops themselves. And that will see some of those gaps and track position shuffle around just a tad. Meanwhile, a gap that has not really shifted so far this race is Patrick Lipka versus Jardier. Will go on board the Lamborghini. It does look like Jardier is a little bit slower in straight line, but the slipstream really only kicks in. And by the looks of it, the tail end, very good commitment from the number 20 car. He sends it very heavily down the inside. I don't think Jardier's going to be happy about that one at all. And it's Archie Bargy again, down out the hairpin. A big send. He did have a good run through 13, but I don't think, looking at the onboard there, I don't think that was quite enough of an overlap, really. There was no overlap until they got to the apex, and I don't imagine that Jardier is going to be too happy about that one. Let's go on board the rear diffuser of the McLaren. You can see there's the big send from the Lamborghini drive, and they get to the apex. There's barely anything on the inside. I'm sure Lipka will say that Jardier should have opened up the steering. Jardier should say, or would say, it was a move that was never on. Thankfully, not too much harm done, but I'm sure that will be the next one on the stewards list. As meanwhile, at the front of the field, as that is Lipka dispatching of some of those that have made stops already. Actual found not been made too easy for him. Ferrari almost looking to come back. James Arcabex is still very much there. Is he going to hang out the way for Jardier? Yes, he does. Now, this will be an interesting fight because how does it all play out between Lipka and Jardier? This time, the McLaren absolutely locked into the slipstream, but the Lamborghini, look at the straight line speed. Just nothing that Jardier can do, and also potentially with a little bit of damage there, maybe suffering overall in terms of straight line speed. There's been swapping of position between Balconi and Oliver Hagstrom, who does a big dive towards turn 10. You don't see many moves being done like that. I think that may have just about been clean. We'll try to see if we can catch on the replay. I'm not sure if there was contact there or not. A mighty send from the Swedish driver, also as Arcabex and Michael Frey swapping some positions further down the order. It's the Ferrari that's come out on top for the time being. As let's have a look and see. Wait a minute, that is a yellow flag out for, that was De Campo, who I think, has he left the server? I think he may have left the server, so I think a yellow flag out there for the Italian driver. I didn't quite see what happened to him there. Meanwhile, Jonathan Clifford now coming into the pits. Unfortunately, we're going to miss that one on the replay. Would have loved to have seen it again, but I'm getting support in the chat, but it was a pretty good move. It did look like a very committed and fantastic effort there, and that is not a place that you see overtakes being made all too often. Meanwhile, someone that hasn't really been able to make any overtakes full stop is George Boothby, who, of course, despite being an absolutely exceptional driver, had that little coming together with Marco Bischoff, but it would be side-to-side contact, so the deficit on his lap time should be pretty negligible. He won't look to repair that damage, I can guarantee you, in the stops. But the Audi straight-line speed of Tinko van der Velde, just enough to keep the McLaren at bay, and we are almost at the halfway point of this pit window. It's becoming more and more viable to pit at this stage of the race. Will there be any opportunities for George Boothby to go for an undercut? Is he going to go to the pits now? No, but Tinko does very late from Tinko van der Velde, barely making the pit entry. Took a very wide line there. I wonder if the stewards have anything to say about that one. Vanti Barrier goes in. I'm not sure what the rules are about crossing the line on the pit entry, but potentially a little bit marginal there. We'll have to see. Meanwhile, at the front, Dario Iemolo has been maintaining that sort of 2-second gap. It's gone to 1.8 at times, 2.2 now. And in P2, the Italian driver, Eric Del Fanti, hasn't had much coverage, but the McLaren right now, he's not just been doing the Italian job, he's been doing the best job that he possibly could have done so far in this race, because after storming into the lead at the first opportunity, whilst he has lost a bit in the opening stint once Iemolo was in a hot pursuit, meanwhile Robin Schwanker concedes a position to the recovering Marco Bischoff, who was going far quicker than the German driver last time around. See if we can catch that one on the replay and see, is it going to be a bit of a poor exit from the McLaren? See, he's compromised, he's very squiffy through that sequence of corners. Does he catch the curbs? He doesn't. And so it just looks like Marco Bischoff. Is this the send that did... Oh my goodness! Robin Schwanker, I must admit, I have never seen that before. A previous race winner, if memory serves correctly, a couple of seasons ago, from the German driver in almost the same car, in the McLaren again. That was at Paul Ricard, I do believe. And... oh, it certainly came very close to it. I don't think I've seen anyone really do that. And now Carreras comes into the pit. Where is George Boothby? George Boothby, I saw bring out the yellow flag. For a moment, oh, thank goodness for that. He's just toppled down my order. Breathe a sigh of relief there. George Boothby and his fellow Veloce teammate both come in for the undercut strategy, as Marco Bischoff now slots back up in towards P3. More and more cars coming into the pits. Iemolo still pushing on. So we'll have to see how powerful is that undercut going to be. Do they crucially come out in clean air? We'll have to wait and see. And also glad to see that you are enjoying the action here on the stream. And I'll tell you what, it's like this every single week, I guarantee you, because these drivers, they know how to put on a show. LFM knows how to put on a good event. And this is the sort of action we are treated to time and time again. It's become a staple here now over at Twitch, of course, starting out on YouTube. But of course, It's incredible stuff. Meanwhile, Matty DeCampo trying to put the pressure on Nils Knox and McLaren, looking very fast in comparison to the BMW in the straights, but just hasn't quite got the opportunity. And a lot of action there in the chat about the idea of no rules over pit entry. I had a feeling that may be the case, as Tinko van der Velde, of course, a very, very fast and competent driver. He's the sort of driver I would imagine would have read the rule book from start to finish, so obviously maximising every opportunity, and it's just amazing how much time you can gain on pit entry, as well as also stopping into your box, making sure you hit your mark. Meanwhile, Del Fanta comes into the pits. Now that could be crucial, because one thing he doesn't want is to get undercut by Iemolo, who showed very good pace in the opening stint, and that was even with a little bit of damage. Meanwhile, George Boothby and Tinko van der Velde resume their fight on circuit, and there's still only half a second between the Audi and the McLaren. Grant Carreras losing out a bit of time by comparison. He is now about it's 3 seconds between himself and his teammates, as that is DeCampo very close and sends one down the inside. Nils Knox has to take evasive action. The Italian driver, does he finally get it done? Just about. Nils Knox, can he do anything? He looks towards the outside. Is it going to be a repeat of the move we saw a few moments ago from one of the STL Esports cars? It's not. He tries to set up the exits. How good is this BMW in a straight line? We'll go on board the front splitter then to get the best perspective as he gains in the rear wing. Vignoli and Pogarello swapping positions. Huge speed boost for the BMW. It's mighty quick down the straights. This is what DeCampo was struggling against, but in the end, despite that massive pace advantage, unless he sends one on the inside of the hairpin, he can't. Magnani is very close behind. Now Luke Anderson trying to apply the pressure to Veit Sorka. He tries to go up the inside, but he can't do anything either. There's a McLaren side by side. Actual Fat Ferrari, very good through here, I would imagine, will carry great potential, but in the end, Veit Sorka, my goodness, takes a very interesting line. In actual fact, may have just lost the position in the process, as Dario Iemolo comes into the pits now, as that is a very good run for Luke Anderson. All the momentum sacrificed on the exit of turn 16 for the McLaren, all the way, long way around in towards turn 2. Surely not, it's tricky to do that, but the drag race out in towards turn 3, not going to work in favour of the number 23 car by the looks of it, and they will stay as they were. Meanwhile, Tinko van der Velde's made a little bit of a breakaway from George Boothby. Del Fanta 10 seconds clear of van der Velde, so that tells you the sort of advantage that he is working with, as Dario Iemolo is in the pits. We'll have to see where he re-emerges on circuit then. Surely we'll start to get the wheels on that car turning in just a moment. Luca Balconi now comes into the pits. Eric Del Fanta then, this is a crucial part of this race. Coming in towards turn 16 now. George Boothby now second away from van der Velde. Where is the Lamborghini? I can hear it moving. I can see it moving on the map. He's just hitting pit exit now, and it's a little bit of a different line through here. Eric Del Fanta is going to come through towards turn 2. Does the Lamborghini come out in front? He doesn't, and the McLaren holds onto the lead, and there's the Lamborghini in just a little bit of the distance then. And Eric Del Fanta does hold on to the lead. I expect the leaderboard should shuffle his way around in just a moment. There we go. And 3.1 seconds is the gap, so he's gained a second by going just a lap earlier. And that will be to the delight of the Italian, who looks to continue to capitalise on the chaos at the beginning of this race, to open up this opportunity for a race win. For all we know, he could have been in that contention for the win anyway, but he drove perfectly in the opening lap. He avoided the chaos, and he has grabbed the opportunity with both hands. And now, just 25 minutes to see if he can convert it. Meanwhile, battles ablaze for P14 between Niox, Magnani, and Barrier, who of course had that penalty, is looking to recover. Does he look to sneak one up the inside in towards turn 8? He's a little bit too far away to send one himself. As you can see, Marco Bischoff, P7 currently in this race, just 1.3 seconds behind Grant Carreras. We'll have to see what his first final lap is going to be. 33.2 from the likes of Boothby and Tinko van der Velde. 0.4 for Korekas. So again, still not quite able to execute the same pace. Let's have a look and see what Valentine can do. He's gaining in the slipstream, but at the tail end of the straight, the BMW is quick, the Lamborghini is quick, and the McLaren just not quite quick enough as they get towards the hairpin, but maybe that's a way to open up an opportunity. And Magnani, very forgiving on the entry there, does leave the Frenchman room. Valentine sent towards the outside, trying to see if he can go for the cutback now and towards turn 16. Surely he does. Sent one up the inside, and he gets the move done, but now can Magnani, that's not the car I want, that's the one. The V10 screaming its way, looking down the inside. Valentine not going to cover it. I don't think Lorenzo is going to hold back on the entry in towards turn 1, but it's very brave around the outside from Valentine, and he will hold on to P15 in the end of ascend at the hairpin. Message received from Lorenzo. He did just leave a little bit of a gap on the entry, and that was all the invitation that Valentine needed, and he set it all up heading in towards turn 16. Don't see too many moves being made up through there. You don't see too many being made up in towards turn 4 either, but I think Pogarello could be in a little bit of trouble here because that Ferrari is mighty in the opening sequence. He's looking to set one up the inside, but he hasn't got the braking potential, or has he? Pogarello goes very deep. He uses the outside line. Now it all comes back in favour of the Ferrari, but the straight line speed of that McLaren is good. It's better, and it's good enough to hold on to that position unless the number 6 car does he think about doing something rather spectacular towards turn 8. He shows the nose, but in the end not able to get alongside. Meanwhile, Michael Frey in the Porsche trying to use the braking potential of that car to open up an opportunity. Cannot do it. Iemolo 3.2 seconds behind Eric Del Fanta, so the undercut working nicely. Tinko van der Velde holding on to position. George Boothby sits in P4. Korekas now with a lot of pressure from Marco Bischoff and could be in trouble very, very soon from the hard-charging German as the Lamborghini starts to really find its stride. 32.7, he's the fastest man on circuit, is Bischoff in the number 1 car, and of course he's not just the number 1 driver in this server, he's the number 1 man on the LFM platform. He's a 2-time Pro Series champion. Michael Frey now found his opportunity, and it's beautifully set up, a little bit more friendly perhaps than some of the other ones that have been very close at the apex, but he uses the Porsche's capabilities to its advantage, and he flies up in towards 29th position. Bailey Thompson obliges and has to drop down to top 30 instead. See if he holds on to it towards turn 1. It looks like he will. I think Michael Frey could be starting to put some pressure on to the STL McLaren in front of Oliver Hagstrom. Meanwhile, let's check in on this fight between Bischoff and Grantas Korekas, and I think we could be seeing a move here because this Lamborghini, we know it's quick. The McLaren is pretty handy as well, but as that V10 starts to build up the revs, it builds up the momentum, and here it comes, the K-Chroma Racing Esports car. Marco Bischoff trying to see, does he send it up in towards turn 13? It doesn't, but what about turn 14 and the hairpin? Does he send it? Oh, it's very on the brakes again, and there's a little bit of contact, and Korekas has to open the door in the end. He did open the steering, but he's kept his foot in it, and Robin Schrank is getting a great view of this side-by-side scrap. But Korekas, he's not going down without a fight. He may only have 1 Pro Series title to his name, but it's still the great caliber of this youngster, and he is not letting the more experienced German behind him get the better of him just quite yet. The Lamborghini will stay in hot pursuit through the opening sector, and I'm sure we'll try to set up an opportunity down in towards turn 8, but Korekas is not going to make it easy, and if nothing else, he's opening in the gap between Marco Bischoff and George Boothby, of course, Korekas' teammate who leads this championship. And as we've seen on previous occasions, time and time again, you can find yourself in a position when you need every single point that you can get your hands on. I think Bischoff's going to be too far away on this occasion. Meanwhile, Valentine Barrier sends one up the inside at the hairpin and gets the job done on Niels Knox. Marco Bischoff not close enough to do anything about the Veloce McLaren of Grant Korekas on this occasion. But look at that, Robin Schranker just hanging around in the background. And don't mind me, lads, you scrap away and I'll be in a position to capitalise, see if I can steam away up into the top 5. After, of course, what was a rather interesting moment between himself and Marco Bischoff on the run towards turn 8 just a few laps ago. Meanwhile, Bischoff, the closest he has been so far. Is he going to get alongside in towards turn 13? That's brave, and Korekas doesn't fall for it. Marco Bischoff can't get alongside. Robin Schranker, the man that just led him through a few moments ago, he's trying to have his say about getting himself back in towards this scrap, and now just half a second or less between the cars as they fly onto another lap. Less than 20 minutes left to go. Pit window now closed, and all of your stops have been done. And it was a blistering lap last time around for my Elmo. A 32.540, nearly 0.4 of a second quicker than your race leader. And the fight for P1, whilst it is still a 3-second gap, whilst it's bigger than it was before the pit stops, still very much could be on as we get to the tail end of this race. Meanwhile, what is going on here? That's Pogorelov going very wide. Vignoli is going very slowly as well. I think he's lost a couple of positions in the process. Let's see if we can catch what happened there between these drivers as they head down the back straight in towards turn 12. Now into 13. Excuse me, this is 12. Now in towards 13. Was there contact at the hairpin? No, it's... Oh my goodness, that's a big slide from Vignoli. Arrives on scene. The McLaren says, what are you doing there? And to be honest, I think number 6 car, Vignoli, really actually knows for himself. But somehow, some way, they get through there relatively cleanly and about the same sort of gap as what they had before they started. That was a fun little episode, and not actually too dissimilar to what yours truly may have done in a Bentley at some point previous. Meanwhile, Marco Bischoff not trying to look to repeat that, but he does want to repeat the send down the inside in towards turn 14. Does he correct us? Wise to it this side. Robin Tranker right in the means of pouncing territory as well. George Boothby starting to find his groove as well now as he starts to reel in Tinko van der Velde 0.2 of a second faster on the last lap alone. Meanwhile, still Korekkas. This might be an opportunity actually for Marco Bischoff. He's very close on the run towards turn 1, but he can't quite get close enough. And you brake surprisingly late in towards turn 1. It's not really an opportunity for overtaking, but Marco Bischoff still stuck in the McLaren, behind the McLaren, whilst George Boothby in the McLaren is in the closest position he has been in a while to the back of Tinko van der Velde. As more and more of you continuing to follow the channel, big welcome to all of you, both in the stream chat, to the channel, to the community, as well as we continue to hit astonishing numbers. It's wonderful to have all of you here with us as De Campo now plummets down the order. What has happened to the number 10 car? Oh my goodness, there he is, spawning into existence is the Italian driver. Can we catch what happens to the McLaren? Because we know he was for a while having a scrap all day. He's got Valentin Barrier right on his case. I don't like where this is going. I believe is there going to be a Frenchman flying up the inside? No, it's going to happen on the exit. There's the touch, and it's almost a mirror image of what we saw on the opening lap. Niels Knox was immediately on the attack, actually, to try to see what he could do about Valentin on exit. But disappointment there for De Campo and a complete innocent bystander in all of that. Meanwhile, Omashima trying to make moves as it's all closing up and down the field. Of course, slightly different tyre strategies potentially between some of these cars. Omashima looks someone on the inside, but cannot make the move stick. What about Grant Korekkas versus Marco Bischoff this time around? Just 0.2 separating them on this occasion, but it's not going to go the way of the Lamborghini. And he's got to be mindful because with Schranko waiting in the wings to find any opportunity that he can. As also a similar sort of thing for this man, Adam Spansky, who of course plummeted down the order. Oh dear, that's not going to help his efforts. He goes very, very wide. And we'll also have to check back in on the stewards' inquiries in just a moment, because they are very important, and the stewards are doing a wonderful, wonderful job. But unfortunately, these guys are doing such an amazing job on the screen, it gets a little bit tricky to keep up with. So, 15-second fine penalty for the number 6 car. Who does that belong to? That belongs to somebody that is not in the server anymore. Oh, no, excuse me. That was Matteo Vignoli as Tinko van der Velde taking a very interesting line. That is to break the toe on exit. But interestingly, George Boothby not wanting anything to do with that. Maybe doesn't want to get too many marbles on his tyres. As once again, Bischoff and Korekkas flying in towards 12. Now into 13. Car starts to get a little bit loose on the braking. There's various ways that you can cope with that sort of pitching effect. And drivers, depending on the sort of platforms they're working on, they might look to treat it with wing, with ride height, front to rear suspension differences, even camber, toe. There is a whole host for every problem that you have in your car. There is always a slightly different solution. And one of them overall might be just a smidge better than the others, but they'll all have their advantages and disadvantages. What makes this sim just so fun being able to play with all of those settings, really make it your car to drive, and it adds so much satisfaction, especially when it does go well to go down via that route. Omashima applying the pressure to Magnani as well. 5-second penalty for the number 20 car. That is Patrick Lipka, and that'll see him drop almost out of the top 10, certainly at least the one position, so not what he would have wanted, as George Boothby, closest he has been in a while, just a couple of tenths separating him and Tinko van der Velde, but again, Tinko just has a smidge enough pace as Dario Aiemolo gets the gap to under 2 seconds for the first time in a while. White flag for Jardier then, but no major issues, but I look for maybe the game just being a little bit on the sensitive side. Meanwhile, George Boothby still not wanting to take that inside line. What about Korekis versus Bischoff? That's not what I wanted. There it is, as the Lamborghini closing all the time. Has to look towards the outside. Is he going to try then setting this up into a run towards the hairpin? You've got to be careful, because Robin Schranker's sitting on the inside himself in the McLaren, and whether or not he was doing it as a friendly thing, whether it was a hardware issue, we won't know, but one way or another, Robin Schranker is on the attack, and he wants to not just get stuck into this battle, but he wants these positions for himself, and is doing everything he can in the McLaren to make that happen. Meanwhile, a 10-second time penalty for the number 17 car. And that car belongs to, that is Valentin Barrier that has his penalty. And the stewards, somehow, someway, just about 42 minutes into this race, so stellar effort from them to catch up on all the inquiries, because I can guarantee there's quite a few from what I'm seeing on my little handy-dandy spreadsheet. 13 minutes to go then in this race. And Del Fanta leads the way ahead of Aiemolo. There he is in that green Lamborghini. These two, 11 seconds clear of Tinko van der Velde. Who would have thought with the sort of performances we have seen from him that anyone would be even ahead of him, let alone by 11 seconds. So it's testament to the pace of these guys. And two very different cars. Typically so far this season, not many occasions we've seen the top two run away from the rest of the pack. Of course, there have been some scrabbles and fights a bit further down in the field that would have helped, but overall, there's been astonishing pace so far from Del Fanta, and what one achievement it would be for him. He has been quick in the Audi and the BMW at times. But is this a day where he's actually going to look to come away with a victory? I have to wait and see. I take the camera off him for now. Hopefully, won't be cursing him with any sort of form of drive-through, as it's getting continuously close between the likes of Korekis, Marco Bischoff, and Robin Schranker. George Boothby still only 3 tenths behind Tinko van der Velde. But what about now? The Lamborghini may be setting an opportunity. Korekis is under pressure. He knows that Marco will be looking to try to do something here. He can't go around the outside, especially because he'll be under a lot of threat from the McLaren of Robin Schranker. At the first given notice, who is that? That is James Arkebex looking to see if he can make a move down towards the hairpin. He's barely got alongside on the entry. Very kind from Pogorelov to open up the gap as they now fly through the last couple of turns. In towards turn 16 they go, and the McLaren will stay in front for that. A little bit of a skip and a jump there from 35 car over the final curb. As the time continues to tick down, opportunities for these moves to be made. Oh, that is Robin Schranker, just as I'm saying it, dives down the inside towards turn 10 and will go on board the rear diffuser. Once again, the wrong camera. These guys are causing me so much action and drama, I've forgotten how to coordinate everything. So for those that are new, and welcome to all of you, I do juggle this all on a single monitor, so sometimes when these guys do some really crazy things, it does get a little bit into a pickle from time to time. But Robin Schranker, we've got the right camera angle on this occasion because he dives down the inside, and it's a fantastic send on Marco Bischoff, not afraid to go toe-to-toe and almost door-to-door through turn 15 with the two-time Pro Series champion, and this gives Korekis just a little bit of breathing room and a chance to run away. Gap between them now is 8 tenths or so of a second between the McLaren and the Lamborghini. What about Lois Rainier versus Renault Coupe? The two STL esports cars, I think, may have had a little bit of a swapping of position. Now, the question is, was this done kindly, or was this done with a little bit of resistance put up for Lois Rainier? See, comes flying through turn 13, and they get towards the hairpin. Renault Coach still the car in front and just looks to go wide and back off the throttle. So the Frenchman will say thank you very much, goes all the way around the outside and up in towards P10 for the SDL Esports McLaren. Meanwhile, a different type of McLaren, a very different story in terms of being able to make up any positions and overtakes. George Boothby has found himself right now glued to the rear of that number 8 Audi, and now Tinko starts to try to break the slipstream a little bit. It's the best opportunity potentially that George Boothby has had in a little while, but again the Audi just mighty quick down this back straight, cannot find an opportunity, and in the end will hold on to P3 as it stands at the moment. But what about Marco Bischoff versus Grantus Correc, as he was almost alongside heading in towards 12 and 13 there, but he couldn't quite get that little advantage over the McLaren of Grantus Correc, as less than 10 minutes to go to find an opportunity. Meanwhile, 1.5 seconds now between your race leaders and Iemolo. He's catching by about 0.2 of a second per lap. There's approximately 6 laps left, and he would find himself in slipstream if he kept up with that margin. We could see ourselves going down to the wire, a last lap shootout between Iemolo and Del Fanta. Meanwhile, we'll watch all these other scraps taking place one by one. It's George Boothby versus Tinko van der Velde for the first time, with a good opportunity, a great exit out of turn 6 and towards turn 7. Not really much of a corner, probably the least cornery looking corner that I've ever seen, really. But George Boothby surmounting more and more pressure over the Dutchman in that number 8 car. Can't make the move stick. Meanwhile, I think that's the leaderboard just getting a little bit on the confused side and shuffling people around when in fact they've made positions. But you can see Pogorelov and Arkabex very close together as George Boothby versus Tinko on the run down through 11 in towards 12. He's got that Audi in his sights. He's been staring at the back of it for almost the entirety of this race, but he still cannot find an opportunity. Marco Bischoff, it's the same story for him in the Lamborghini versus the next of the McLarens. It's a very evenly paced between these cars, whether it be finding time in the middle sector or trying to close in on all the fast stuff, of which there, of course, is a decent chunk in a couple of places. I think Marco Wong might be about to highlight just that in the BMW. We haven't seen BMWs really be able to make too much progress today, but it does look like for Z Challenger Racing in the number 32 car, he is going to get the job done. What about James Arkabex now in the Ferrari, trying to see if he can find a way past Pogorelov. Pogorelov has to go defensive. Ferrari almost towards the inside. Does he send it at the hairpin though? And the answer is not quite. And in fact that he can't anyway, because Pogorelov goes very deep on the brakes. Almost too deep for his own good, and does lose a bit of ground and time, but he does recover it, generally speaking. Yellow flag for Vignola. I can only imagine he briefly went over the exit curbs of turn 15 there, because that can certainly throw your car around and send you onto a little bit of an excursion, as James Arkabex continuing to try to recover. 24th position right now. Still a good result for him, but I imagine he'll be disappointed and would have definitely been wanting more. Marco Bischoff still in the tracks of Grantus Correcus, but now made the best opportunity. Has he got enough of an overlap to go around the outside, trying to go out to the inside to set up a move and defend Schwanker? He can't do it though, and he will have to concede once more, because now Robin Schwanker gets a fantastic move all the way around the outside. He's keeping his foot in it. They're still side by side on the run. He's bouncing all over the cars, and there's the Lamborghini resurging in towards P6 at a second now. The gap between himself and Grantus Correcus. Has that given Correcus the breathing space that he so desperately wanted? Has it given a bit of a breakaway in the slipstream for Marco Bischoff to lose out at the top end and give this McLaren that we're on board with a potential opportunity? We'll have to wait and see. Just 5.5 minutes left on the clock between the drivers now for 23rd, 24th and 25th position. 0.3 of a second separates them. Almost a narrow margin as some of the gaps for our lead positions then. So I just go to show you, no matter where you are in the field, no matter what the fight is, you are very much in it, and there is no doubt about that. IMLO again. 33.1 versus 33.2. 1.2 seconds the gap now to Del Phantom. Theoretically, it might just get faster and faster. We'll have to wait and see. Nico Pennon, I think, maintaining position over Chris Tang, but the time board just having a little bit of an update there or thereabouts. You can see right there, BMW firmly glued to the back of Nico's car, but just cannot make up a move. Meanwhile, at the front of the circuit, I saw the gap down at 0.1 seconds for a brief, fleeting moment, but you can visibly see this is by far the closest to George Boothby's B, but he can't. I thought we were in the middle of the circuit. I thought that was the exit turn 6 for a moment. No, we were at the entry towards turn 16. We first tuned in with that, but George Boothby is continuing to get closer and closer, but just cannot find an opportunity over the man sits in front of him. Same goes for Marco Bischoff. He's absolutely glued to the rear of this McLaren. Does he send out the inside of turn 4? He decides not to. Could be a bit of a wonky line from Boothby. Excuse me, Carreras. As he now is... but he gets a good drive out of turn 6. Look at the momentum he gains on the exit. And in actual fact, Marco Bischoff has got more problems right now hanging around in the form of Robin Schwanker sitting behind in the slipstream. Meanwhile, scraps taking place further down on the end as well. My goodness, we're almost 3 wide on the run up in towards turn 1. It's James Arkebex that holds on for the time being. What about Clifford? Big wiggle for him on the apex. Now that's Oliver Hagstrom and Pogorilov. And Oliver Hagstrom has had a moment through that little sequence in the opening sector. Disappointment there for the sweep. I need to have a look at this because the most side-by-side they've been for a while, but it's not the way around. We've seen it previously. Robin Schwanker, despite conceding the position to Marco Bischoff, he is coming back and he is looking to party. 3 minutes left on the clock. 3 positions all being scrapped for right now between these cars. And Robin Schwanker, he can't find a way through on that occasion. But again, it's a second now between Marco Bischoff and Carreras. As Omashima trying to apply the pressure, so does Arkebex versus Jan Drexler. I think the Ferrari getting the move done at turn 10. Excuse me, turn 8. Just tuning in further up the front, Dario Iemolo. Look at this man as we go on board the helicam shot. That's the distance between your race leaders. Only 0.7 seconds separates them. One of them got sent around at the start of the race. The other one very kindly held the brakes and watched on as the carnage unfolded, and he's led ever since, Del Fanta. But Iemolo right now at this stage of the race, maybe that little bit of damage on board his car was just hurting his pace advantage a smidge. And it's going to be such an interesting race between these two. McLaren, I think, pretty handy still in a straight line, as the Lamborghini still flying on. But I think this will be the final lap. So the final lap of opportunity is going to be tight with the timer. But I think that Del Fanta, he's going to be wanting it to come around sooner rather than later. I think he will just about. 5, 4, 3, 2. So yeah, we will. This will be the final lap. Then you see Noah Reed. Excuse me, it's not Noah Reed. I think that's Bodenberger in the Mercedes. We haven't had the official call from the engineer, but I do believe that this will be the fastest lap. Excuse me, final lap between Iemolo and your race leader, Del Fanta. George Boothby continues to sustain the pressure. Jonathan Clifford now having a scrap of his own, trying to go down the inside in towards turn 10 in that number 25 Lamborghini. Getting very close. Cannot make it stick. We'll try to catch up with this drag race in just a moment, because we've also got Tinko van der Velde, who's got George Boothby all breathing down his neck once more as Jonathan Clifford flies around the outside when he's trying it anyway to Oliver Hagstrom, but he can't make it stick. And in the end, will stay behind for now. What about the Audi of Aaron Spansky? He can't make it stink. Stick, Luca Balconi can't do it either. But what about this then? Del Fanta heading down the back straight. 0.7 seconds is the gap between himself and Ievolo. There's the Lamborghini hard charging in the background. Marco Bischoff now trying to go all the way around the outside of Grantis Correcas on the last lap of the race. And we're going to have to keep going back and forth to catch up with all of this. But Del Fanta, he has just 2 more corners to go. And after storming into the lead and taking it away from the Lamborghini that has filled up his mirrors in the second stint, Del Fanta returns to the top step of the podium with a bang in the McLaren and wins here at Misano. Fantastic race from him, but the fight for P3 and P5 still kicking off. Tinko van der Velde looks like he's going to hold on to it, but Correcas holds on to P5 with Marco Bischoff and Robin Schwager on the last lap of this race. Argy-bargy on the exit of turn 15, and this scrap that has gone on lap after lap eventually comes to a close, somehow in the order that they've been in for about the last 20 minutes. Meanwhile, final drag races and battles. Omashima versus Magnani currently for P14. Omashima, not the best race for him. He is up 6 positions. Can he make it 7? He need a mighty run. So would Nils Knox to the line. He can't do it. What about Omashima in the number 21 car? He can't do that either. We skip on down. These drivers have taken it out of me, I have to say, in this race. They have put on an absolute brilliant show, and it's still going. Very bunched up on the apex was all of these cars. They've gone into 2 separate little mini trains now, and either of them going to have an opportunity towards turn 16. Oliver Hagstrom thinking about it down the inside of Vignoli, who might be about to lose out on the final corner. Drag race towards the line between all these drivers. The McLaren gets it, and Pogorelov does sit behind Drexler, just behind in the end. Frey sits behind Nico Penman, and I think in terms of all the battles, the action towards the line will eventually calm down and die down, and I could not have asked for a more eventful, more dramatic, more fantastic race than that. That is what we live for here in the Pro Series. An amazing bit of action put on show, and a big congratulations to Eric Del Fanta. What a drive from him. Of course, maybe on raw pace didn't have it. Dario was compromised in the first stint. He was clearly the faster of the 2 in the second, but these two were the class of the field. 17.1 seconds a gap between themselves and Tinko van der Velde in the end. That's the sort of gap we've seen the other way around with Tinko in recent events, and in 2 different manufacturers to do that as well, and they really showed the rest of the field for the Lamborghini and the McLaren drivers exactly how much pace could be extracted from their cars. Incredible stuff from them. But Del Fanta, he had a lot of pressure on his shoulders, but he withstood absolutely all of it from start to finish. We'll see, and he is in the interview room waiting for us to bring him on in, which is wonderful news, and we will look to do exactly that. So as we bring in our race winner from today, Eric Del Fanta, to do it on home soil, you must be absolutely beside yourself. An incredible performance from you. The waves parted in front of you on the opening lap. You stormed into that lead, and after that, you never looked back. How are you feeling after that amazing victory?
Hi guys. Yeah, I'm super happy of the race. I didn't expect to win my first LFM Pro race in Misano. Generally, it's one of my worst tracks, so I'm surprised.
Well, it makes it all the more special then, because not only then did you perform at a circuit that perhaps isn't naturally one that you feel like you gel with all too well. In your McLaren, you made that car today live up to expectation. We came away from last week and we kind of got the inkling that the McLarens would be quick. And, we expected Boothby, Correcas, those drivers to kind of be up there with you, and they were thereabouts there in qualifying. But in the race, for the McLarens, you were just on another level. Did you feel like you had really good pace going into this round, or did it come as a surprise to you about how quick you were?
Yes, like I said, I was very surprised of my pace. But I think the car was mega. The setup was perfect, and I can manage the race perfectly. Yemul was a little bit faster than me, but with the 2 seconds of gap in the first lap, and also 1 second I gained in the pit stop, I can win the race.
Yeah, you managed that gap brilliantly, and you did exactly what you needed to do. And I must ask, when IMLO, we could see he was putting in these pretty speedy laps in that second stint and just chipping away at that gap, and it was, you know, getting below 2 seconds, below 1.5, below 1,
Yes.
and it was like with around half a second as you crossed the line. How was the tension inside the cockpit of your McLaren? Was it, you know, were the hands gripping the wheel harder and harder as you went along?
Yeah, I'm super sweat because I pushed for 1 hour and I never did this in my life before. I think.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, it was an absolutely fantastic drive from you. A big congratulations, and to do it on home soil.
Also, my team, Italian job, they were super and helped me to prepare the car and also the setup. So thanks a lot today.
Oh, so that's amazing stuff, and yeah, it is, you know, quite often in, you know, in the world of sim racing and real motorsport, it is a team efforts that get to these performances. So yeah, fantastic to hear that from you, and yeah, what a fantastic result in that. And just looking forward into our calendar, heading to Suzuka for next week, which will be a 90-minute race for that one. How are we feeling the pace may be there? Obviously, maybe you were a bit surprised by Misano, so it could be a little bit difficult to judge based on that theme. But what's kind of your instincts there with how you might be at what's such a legendary venue?
I don't know. I think McLaren is not that fast in Suzuka, but I think that also for this race, so we will see.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think the phrase "never say never" comes to mind because quite clearly you put together an astonishing amount of form for Misano in the end. So it may not feel the best going into Suzuka, but for all we know, it could be 2 wins on the trot for you, Eric. So we'll see how it all plays out and how it comes together. But yeah, once again, massive congratulations to you. Fantastic drive today, and who knows, may even hear from you next week in the interview room once again.
Yeah, we will see.
Thanks a lot, Eric. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Great stuff there from Eric Delfanta, your race winner from this evening with an astonishing drive in that McLaren. And I have to say, you know, I would have been interested actually to hear a little bit from the likes of George Boothby or Grant Carreras, maybe not feeling quite so sprightly after not getting a podium finish. But, you know, to put 20-odd seconds on the likes of George Boothby in the same car when he is your champion, he's the championship leader on overall net total points of this season. And he is known for extracting pace out of cars, usually like no other. And Eric Delfanta, it must be said, rather schooled the Veloce team and all of that. So a fantastic bit of work done from him and the rest of the Italian job team to put that all together. And a brilliant, well-driven, mature, composed result from him to bring that on home. Commiserations to Dario. I know that he'll be feeling a little bit disappointed. He almost made it, an Italian driver, an Italian car, around an Italian circuit to take victory here today, and arguably could have very much been at the tippy top of this field if he hadn't have had that incident with Noah Reader on the first lap. But he did very well to get his head back down again, recover P2, and was almost on it. What a difference it could have made if we had a 90-minute race today. Maybe he could have taken the victory, but in the end, just a little bit too far away out of his grasp in the end. We'll have a little bit of a look through the final race results, though, for you as Delfanta and Emilo make it Italia 1-2 with Van der Velde, Boothby, Carreras, Bischoff, Schranker, Lipka, Joliet, Rainier, Cooch, Niox, Magnani, Omashima, and Manson round out your top 15. And then Matteo De Campo next of the Italians with Barra, Vitschorka, Marco Wong, Jan Drexler, Oliver Hagstrom, Vignoli, Arkabex, who rather got commentator cursed, perhaps the worst one I've ever done. I do apologise to the Frenchman. Clifford Spansky, Addison Pennon, Frey Sang, and Kohlberg Brenham to the end of your top 30. And then Pogorelov, Balconi, Lutschek, and Bodenberger your final finishers, with Thompson and Noah Reeder your retirees of this race, unfortunately, for them. So a little bit disappointing for some of those drivers. Of course, when you have a race filled with such action, there's going to be a little bit of a flip side to every story. You're going to have delight, you're going to have despair, but one thing we were guaranteed from the beginning, and exactly what we were given, was action and drama start to finish. And a big thank you once again to all of those that tuned in for the first time, those that follow the channel. If you did enjoy what you saw today, then do look to give it a follow, because we will have more exciting stuff week in, week out in this wonderful Pro Series. But that will be it then for today. So thank you everybody that joined for another wonderful stream here over on Twitch. It's been a wonderful couple of weeks as we've moved our way over, and great to have you all here along the way. If you have enjoyed what you have liked, even beyond tuning in with the action, whilst I do not particularly want you to leave me and go anywhere, it's been wonderful having you all in the chat and supporting your drivers. If you fancy a bit of driving yourself, though, do head over to the lowfuelmotorsport.com website, and you can start to get involved in championships just like this. Get yourself signed up, get yourself a license, and you can work your way through the ranks on there. And also, of course, compete in the daily racing system that LFM has as well. And if GT racing on ACC isn't quite your cup of tea, then you can also explore the world of R-Factor 2, where there's everything from open wheelers, prototypes, the Nordschleifer, if you really want one of the biggest sim racing challenges available out there, and also things like touring cars, if maybe you just like a bit more door-to-door contact. We don't encourage that particularly here, but it does come with the territory. So it's a BTCC pack, so we kind of anticipate perhaps a little bit of that, but obviously LFM, we just overall have a wonderful racing community, and exactly as we demonstrated tonight, that when people do start to maybe have either some mistakes or get a bit scrappy on circuit, then there are stewards, an appealing system for the non-live stewarded races as well, to make sure that overall in the grand scheme of things everything ends up as fair and square as it can be, which is what we want in the world of sim racing. And if maybe you just want to be a bit more involved in the world of LFM, also look to join our Discord server, as well as the LFM platform overall has grown to over 100,000 users, and the Discord server is full of all of those sim racing and motorsport fanatics that support all of the things that we know and love here, whether it be ACC, whether it be real life SRO, GT, or even a mixture in between. We're a friendly bunch, so do also look to join us over there as well. And of course, if you have enjoyed what you saw on the stream this evening, then tune in again next week when we'll be heading to Suzuka, and be sure to give the channel a follow so that you can stay in touch with all of the action that the Pro Series has to offer as we enter the final 4 races of Season 11, where it's looking very interesting towards the top end of the standings, with more and more dynamic action and drama every single week. So be sure to tune in once again so you don't miss that. But thank you everybody so much then for watching. But for tonight then, it's goodbye.